Hi, this is Chris Smith of Local Joe's. At Local Joe's, we help local business. Hi, this is Chris Smith with Local Joe's.
This is City Pulse Newsmakers, a weekly look at the issues and the people behind them in Greater Lansing. Brought to you by City Pulse, Lansing's weekly alternative newspaper. And now, here's your host, City Pulse publisher, Burl Schwartz.
Good morning. Is voter fraud really a problem, or is it just trumped up? That's one of the topics we're going to address today. We've assembled a panel of Democratic politicians and political activists from the Republican side of things. Lansing City Clerk Chris Swope and the chairman of the Michigan Democratic Party, joining us for the first time, Brandon Dillon, and two supporters of the Trump campaign, also joining us for the first time, Professor Joseph Guzman from Michigan State University, who is co-chair of the Trump campaign in Michigan and also serves on the Hispanic Advisory Committee that Donald Trump has assembled. And Army Colonel Rocky Rakowski, retired, who is chairs a veterans committee here in Michigan for the Trump campaign. Welcome to all of you. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
My pleasure. And so I want to talk about this voter fraud issue because it has come up in a big way in the campaign. And there are interesting overtones, but I'd like to start first with Chris Swope, because you're very much in the business of looking out for voter fraud. And you've also, if I recall correctly, chaired the Michigan Clerks Association.
That's correct, yes. Yep.
Do clerks feel there's any problem with voter fraud in Michigan?
Michigan clerks do not think that there is an issue with voter fraud. We think we have a very clean system. We have a clean list of voters, and we have procedures in place on Election Day. We have a balance of Republicans and Democrats in the polling place to watch for things, who are our election workers, our eyes and ears, who process the voters through, and the steps that it would take to do any type of voter impersonation on any kind of a mass scale that could in any way impact the outcome of a large statewide or national election. I don't see how it's possible in Michigan.
Are you aware, since you've been a clerk, Chris, of any incident of voter fraud in Michigan?
I think there's been one time when we uncovered somebody a few cycles ago that had actually voted twice in Michigan, and it was a circumstance where they lived here, had gotten an absentee ballot, returned it, and then turned out, having moved to another jurisdiction, didn't think their ballot here was going to be counted because they had moved. And it was,
Sure.
The system is not 100% perfect, but I think it was an innocent mistake on the voters' part. That's the only instance that I'm aware of in the city of Lansing.
All right, so
Sure.
Let me ask you, Mr. Rakowski.
Yeah. Rocky, please.
Rocky, the incident of voter fraud, and we hear this over and over and over from people, saying there are no examples other than
there actually are.
So
There are, and if you key in on exactly what Chris said, and Chris and the clerks in Michigan do a great job. We have a great Secretary of State. We have what's called a qualified voter file that cleans up the different city, municipalities, counties, townships, the voter rolls. But we have had some issues in Michigan. And real quickly, I just want to mention that there was an investigation nationally of how many people were actually registered to how many people would come out and vote, or how many people live in those specific districts. And 3 counties in Michigan popped up as having more people registered than actually live in those counties, or that could possibly be registered. So our qualified voter file still needs a little bit of fixing. And this is something that I don't blame both Republicans or Democrats. It's something that both parties are working towards. But when you talk about election fraud, Chris said something that I want people to focus in on, and that is not at a large scale. And I agree with you, Chris. It's not at a large scale. It's at a smaller scale. And for example, I was personally affected by something that you may have heard of in Pontiac, Michigan. There was a young lady that was found mummified in the back of her car when her house was repossessed and resold, and her name was Pia Fahrenkopf. If you just go to Google and you Google the name Pia, P-I-A, and punch in Pontiac, you'll see that the coroner said she died, and all her bank records said she died in late 2009, early 2010. She didn't vote ever. Even in 2008, she didn't vote, but for some odd reason, she came out and voted in the general election of 2010. So there are questions of individuals that can come in with provisional ballots. That's why I think that we should tighten the fact of requesting IDs for individuals and ID checks, and we shouldn't have provisional ballots. Why do we have provisional ballots?
Do you want to add anything to that, Professor?
Well, we're talking about the local picture, and some of the comments that were picked up on to bring the topic up are from the national picture. And so one thing that puzzles me is that there, in the national dialogue, we are talking about Russia attempting to affect our elections. And we've got a lot of concern about electronic voting machines, especially those where we eliminate the physical record. And there's a county in Texas that took an emergency measure because of when they tested these machines, they were actually flipping votes, and they were concerned about it, so they took an emergency measure to create all physical ballots. Wouldn't we want to make sure that we do everything we can to ensure the integrity of our elections by doing what Rocky
but of
mentioned?
course, no one disagrees with that. I want to ask Brandon Dillon, when you heard Donald Trump turn this into something, or did you hear Donald Trump turn this into something else when he talked about Philadelphia and St. Louis? And what are the implications to you of a statement like that?
Yeah, well, it's clear. I mean, Donald Trump is not engaging in a sober analysis of the potentials for electronic voting machines to be manipulated. He is talking about sending people into urban communities to monitor the election because there are going to be large-scale attempts at voter fraud. And that is, simply never been proven. It's not true. And it smacks of intimidation. If there are problems, in Michigan, for instance, none of our voting systems are connected to the internet. We do have a paper ballot trail. So the idea that there's going to be some sort of massive voter fraud, the way Donald Trump is suggesting it, by the Democrats to somehow deny him the election, is absurd on its face. And the continued discussion of this, I think, only feeds into this narrative that he's trying to create, that all forces are aligned against him.
No, well,
I don't agree at
You
all.
actually bring up a very valid point. Again, you use the word mass fraud, and we all agree. I think we can all say there's not a mass fraud, and Michigan's much better than other states. But let's focus on Project Veritas and the videos that recently came out and the emails of how even the DNC was conspiring with Clinton against Bernie Sanders voters, even in Michigan. And let's look at what Project Veritas, which for folks that don't know what Project Veritas is, it's James O'Keefe went out and he does hidden camera interviews, and two Democratic maybe consultants or contractors lost their jobs because they were boasting about how they move people across state lines to affect votes and vote totals in states where it's easier to do this than in Michigan.
Well, I'd like to add to that. Number one is having citizen observers is not absurd. That's
true.
Been,
No, we do.
practice
We
that
already
has
have
happened.
those in
I
the
didn't
polling
interrupt you.
places.
In Michigan.
The having citizen observers is not absurd. But this Project Veritas, as Rocky mentioned, and Robert Creamer even mentioned in the Veritas second video, Michigan twice, and they were talking about enhancing the sophistication of their voter fraud efforts. This man visited the White House hundreds of times, and
340.
visited personally with President Obama over 40 times. I would be very concerned about an organization so funded and so with such a broad slate of clientele, all Democratic, talking about raising the bar on their fraud efforts.
But earlier you said there is no large-scale voter fraud, and now
Michigan.
in
I
Michigan,
didn't say that.
right? No, you
Large
said
scale.
everywhere.
Large scale.
And
No,
now,
I said
but
Michigan.
you're doing the very same thing that Donald Trump is trying to do, is to create the illusion that there is some sort of
Listen.
large-scale vote. No, hold on, Rocky. And here's the evidence. If there was, Democrats apparently would never lose an election, because if we somehow have these busloads of people that we can drive across state lines and rig every election. We've lost in 2010 and 2014. It simply is, as another video that was released today by a member of one of the pro-Trump super PACs said, that this effort is all intended for one purpose: to suppress the vote in urban communities so that people feel that the election is not going to be
No.
safe. It
That's
came
not
out today,
right.
Rocky.
That's
I know
not
you.
accurate.
I know you
Suppress
trolled
the
the
vote.
right-wing
but
internet.
that's-
So why don't you go and take a look at it?
I troll the Washington Times as well, and I also see what the Democrats post and what liberal media. I mean, during the Al Smith dinner in New York, it's all fun and games, right? We all joke. But Donald Trump had a great one-liner when he said, "I met Clinton's campaign team. There they are, at CNBC, NBC, and so forth." And the emails. Let's talk about the hacked emails. Sure, it's illegal to hack emails. We all agree about
So it's
that.
espionage.
But sure, but the
Encouraged
truth
by the
came-
Trump
But
campaign.
let's be honest.
When you
the
compare
truth
the
of
amount
those
of
emails
time-
came out, and in those emails, it specifically talks about the collusion between the news media and the Clinton campaign, and how polling can be used
Even
to
collusion
suppress
between the
people.
super PAC and the
That's
campaign.
really not true.
It's
And no,
true.
not
It's
a
absolutely
single-
true.
you know,
When you look at the amount of airtime that Donald Trump has gotten over the past year and a half, to say that the media is in any way in collusion with any other campaign
Sure.
is ridiculous. I mean, the media dragged
Airtime
him
and-
across
the airtime is. I don't count
Airtime,
that.
pre-coordination on polling slant with oversampling strategies.
Professor, the
and
oversampling.
not a
Do you
single
understand what
WikiLeaks
oversampling is?
Yes.
Do you understand why Democratic?
Asking more
And
questions.
that's,
than
that's why
right.
we have giant differences.
Do you know
between
why-
polls,
do you
and
know
that's why we had a
Republicans-
20-point poll for predicting for Hillary Clinton that ended up.
Professor Guzman brings up
You
a
are
very valid
absolutely,
point.
you are
Bernie-
absolutely,
Bernie
you are
Sanders win.
Professor. You are absolutely
Were you
wrong
expecting
about
to
what
get involved in
oversampling is.
I'm enjoying it.
All campaigns engage in internal polling, and some media polls may in oversampling certain demographics to test messages.
Very true.
That
To
is
test
very
messages,
true.
but not to lay out polling. And Professor Guzman brings
That
up
is
a very
not
valid
what they
point.
said.
and to
Not
get a valid sample
preconditioned
of
strategies.
smaller population groups.
Not,
Sure,
not,
but-
not
So
the
are you
preconditioned
saying
strategies in
that the
coordination
Clinton?
with a
So is it
pollster.
your assessment that the Clinton campaign and the DNC is actively working with all of the media polling groups to skew
Not
polls?
all.
in
Not
favor?
all.
Okay.
NBC,
All of them.
CNBC,
Right.
MSNBC.
But not Fox News, of course.
Well, let me
Well,
get back
no,
to
Fox
it.
News.
Right.
But what's also interesting, and let me end on this point before we move into a different subject. Obviously, Burl
No, I'm
wants
not.
to-
I want to
I
get
have
back
a question.
to.
I want to
on
point
this
this
subject, though,
with what
before we go
Professor
on,
Guzman
Rocky.
said, and that is that it's very interesting how you can have one poll say Hillary Clinton's leading by 12 or 14 points, and then the next couple days later, she's down to 3-point lead. Let's face it, the Republicans are obviously running a campaign that's maybe trailing in some states, not trailing in others. But I believe, as our famous Michigan liberal said, Michael Moore, there's a lot of people that are afraid, and I'm quoting Michael Moore. Go to YouTube, check it out. He said a lot of people are afraid of telling how they truly feel in these polls, and he believes, as I do, there's a majority of people out there. The algorithms of polling is wrong, and there's a majority of people that are feeling, Democrats as well as Republicans, that are feeling that this is a way to vote for Trump and give the establishment on both sides, both political parties, the you know what.
Democracy-
Rewind to 2012. This is the exact same argument Republicans were using to say that the polls were skewed. That there was
Obviously,
this,
your
that there
playbook
was this,
worked well,
that there
didn't
was
it?
a certain missing
Just admit it.
voter who wouldn't admit that they were doing it.
Okay.
I mean, it's
let me,
Sorry,
if I
Chris.
may, let me get back to the Philadelphia and St. Louis question, because why did he single out two cities, and I forget what the third one was, with heavy African American population?
Well, Detroit has a heavy African American
Right. Why did
population.
you-
It's not about singling out cities with heavy African American populations. It's pointing out cities that have laxer than usual, and states that have laxer than usual election standards. It's not about pointing out areas because they're Hispanic, Polish, Chinese,
Pittsburgh's
or
in that
black.
state.
Yeah,
he
sure
didn't
it
mention
is.
Pittsburgh.
Well, you
What
know,
lax
he
voting
mentioned
standards do
Philadelphia.
they have in
And
Missouri?
let's not forget, Philadelphia's had corrupt mayors and corrupt city clerks, just like Detroit has. They have.
Well, actually, I have quite a bit of history in Philadelphia, and I don't recall anybody going to jail in Philadelphia.
You don't recall the FBI tapping the mayor's office? And I forgot the mayor's office.
Well,
the
they
mayor's
also
name.
tapped Martin Luther King's phone, so...
That was in a different time. Now, I hope we're beyond the racist question, and hopefully, as generations move forward, we stop looking at people as color and we look at the character, like Martin Luther King said. But I think to answer your question,
how do you
that's
do that in a
specifically why.
campaign with a candidate who refers to someone as my African American?
But I can't answer that question, and quite frankly, Hillary Clinton, you look at both of these candidates. We have two candidates that are, if you look at polling data, and not swayed polling, but data, but across the board, both of these candidates are viewed very negatively by a majority of Americans. But when you look at the individual, look at Hillary Clinton's emails.
Why won't
in
Trump
Hillary
people
Clinton's emails,
address
there's a lot of racism.
When those questions are raised by the
He's
biased
not an expert
national
politician.
media,
He's not an expert
Okay.
politician. He speaks
right,
off the
I'll
cuff,
buy
and
that.
I don't believe I would not support a racist. I would be if I would. I did not support David Duke. Nor, well, he wasn't in my state, but I wouldn't support, if David Duke lived in Michigan, I would be voting against him. I would not support a racist. But I'm standing here, or sitting here today, supporting Donald Trump. And listen, he's not the best candidate in the world, but I'm here to support Donald Trump because when I look at the opposition, Hillary Clinton and what she stands for, and the two sides for every issue that she takes, I have a daughter and a family to protect. And that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump.
But how can you criticize her for the two sides of every issue she takes when he says, I was for the war in Iraq before I was against the war in Iraq, or whatever his true position is. He's
Obviously,
done the same thing.
yeah, but
Nice
one
things
interesting
he
thing
said.
is during the debates, he came out and took a firm stance on the Supreme Court. He took firm, specific stances on specific issues that we have to hold him accountable. We only can look at the candidate by what they've done in public service. He was never in public service. Hillary Clinton, on the other hand, so the emails show very clearly that she bought and sold the Department of State to help Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. There was pay for play.
Rocky,
That-
you're
that goes
hyperventilating.
beyond
Because
I mean,
it's
relax.
true. It's true.
Relax.
If
Nothing
this is
to
not
relax
upsetting
about.
you, this should be upsetting every single American and every single Democrat.
You know what
there are
upset you?
people that are hurting out there economically, and they aren't going to take it anymore. And Donald Trump
There's a
is
lot
their
of
vessel.
people hurt. There's a
Donald
lot.
Trump
There's a
is their
lot. There's a
vessel.
lot of people hurting, particularly the people who could make furniture in Grand Rapids
Sure.
for Donald Trump, except he makes it in Turkey. There's people in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania who could be making their ties there. He's making those in China. Yeah, there's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of small business. Excuse me, you
Obama had a full. No,
Andy,
you can
Andy,
blame
you ranted.
him.
You ranted.
It's not a rant. It's an emotional statement because it's true.
For
the
4
Democrats had a majority because you should have punched in then. Democrats had a majority under Obama's first two years. What did they accomplish? They gave us an Affordable Care Act that's a disaster and raising rates on individuals.
Do you remember what the unemployment rate was when Obama took office?
Oh, come on! The economy was already
do you
lifting
remember-
out of
would you
that.
remember what it
You're
was?
also going to tell me. You're also going to tell me that Obama helped the auto industry and that he didn't take them into bankruptcy. I'm sorry. Put your chairmanship on the line right here on TV and say that the two companies, General Motors and Chrysler, did not go through bankruptcy. Tell me that they did not go through bankruptcy
Rocky.
court. No, put your chairmanship on the line here and tell me that Obama didn't put them through
Rocky,
bankruptcy and hurt people on the line. Tell me.
Are you done?
Tell me.
Are you done?
You're not willing to take the
Are you
challenge
done?
because you know that the Democratic Party is full of garbage when they lied to people and lied to the poor in the inner cities.
There's a reason
That's
why.
they're
There's a
voting for
reason
Trump.
why. I'll tell you why. There's a reason why women, suburban women, and even Republican women are fleeing the Republican Party. You've just seen an example of it right there. Angry white men who are willing to
And you
say
don't think
anything.
there's angry women?
There's.
You don't think there's people that can't afford their food on their
Just
table?
keep going. You're helping us.
I hope I am because I'm speaking to the people that are like all of us here at the table, men and women that have families, men and women that are just graduating from college that can't find jobs. And you're saying that everything's fine? I turn around and I say, if you think that everything's fine in this economy, vote for the Democrats, vote for Hillary Clinton. It's not about anger. It's about being upset and disappointed with both political parties, the establishment, that basically gave us this situation. And you as a party leader should stand up and say to the Democrats that aren't doing their jobs, Do your job. Don't play politics.
It would be much easier to have this conversation. The anger might be justified if you actually had one or two facts to back it up.
I just gave you facts.
No, Andy, you give hyperbole. You're a polemicist. It's good. You are a
Thank you for
passionate
the
advocate.
thesaurus
You are a passionate advocate for the Trump campaign, and hopefully someday down the road you can explain that to people why you were on the wrong side
All
of the
right,
street.
Chris,
Sure.
you want to chime in?
Sorry, Chris.
It seems like we have two candidates here, and while with respect, you say that electing Trump would upset the system, but I think he would just hand things over to the people that already run the system, because he has no idea how to run a government. So I don't see where that's going to give us any positive. I think in 2008, Barack Obama was elected, and he came in 2009, and the economy was in really horrible shape, and it has made a huge turnaround. Affordable Care Act needs some repairs, needs some fixes, and I think Hillary's got the plan to do it. I think with a Trump, you're going to get all these empty promises that just don't do anything. I don't see the list of people that Donald Trump named for the U.S. Supreme Court would detrimentally attack my civil rights. So that list is disqualifying for me. That list makes me in no way able to vote for Donald Trump.
Professor?
Well, we've covered so many topics, and I'm afraid as we move on that we're not really hitting the prior topics to the right degree. We brought the issue up of the lies told by the Clinton campaign, and one of them was also the internal corruption when she was with the State Department, and how they coordinated in the transfer of 20% of the U.S. plutonium supply to Russia. That story was broken very cleanly by the New York Times, and it's very clear. Those facts aren't even in dispute. We have numerous other instances of corruption or even Democratic Party operatives, Podesta, Colin Powell now, who's been siding with the Democrats for a bit, has also said they're very concerned about Hillary's judgment on international affairs, and we have a wake of destruction that we've seen from Libya to Syria. There's also evidence now, again from WikiLeaks, that have not been disproven that there was knowledge of transfers of arms that was denied to Congress when asked. So and we haven't even gotten to the emails, to all the emails that were destroyed. I'll tell you what, we have a very clear choice between parties here. We have a party who wants to protect our rights, who wants to reduce taxes. He wants to bring in flight capital that can come back in. It's having great difficulty coming in by bringing it in at a 10% rate. He's got family leave
Let me
policies,
interrupt you.
and the clear difference is that the other party wants government to further and further encroach on our lives.
Let me interrupt you,
double
Professor.
the.
You say it's a party, but what I see is a party in disarray. I mean, you have the ranking Republican who's walked away from your candidate.
Every great politician interprets the platform, and Mr. Trump has interpreted the Republican platform to support the worker and pull away from the galvanized interests that have been holding things hostage, and they've been done well, regardless of which party's in power. Goldman Sachs, the pharma companies, the defense industry that's grown out of proportion, the jails for profit that started under Bill
Well,
Clinton.
may I-
All
Where
of those-
where are you going with this?
What I'm saying is we've got a clean. No, this is the established. Mr. Trump is against the establishment, and he's here to put America back to work.
You
And
said there
I'm
was differences
well,
between the two parties. Obviously, there's a big difference within the Republican
the
Party.
candidates,
platforms.
the
Yeah.
candidates,
Read
and
the
the
platforms.
Which
candidates selected
your
by the two
candidate
parties.
has nothing to do with other than
Absolutely
some language
not.
about
No,
Russia.
Professor
He's-
Guzman
he's
makes
got
a very
true-
good point. The candidate is the chairman of the platform. He's responsible, and this is one of the best platforms for America laid out ever. I mean,
Ever.
when you look at what the Democratic platform, they took out English as a national language. They took out a reference to God in their and all religions. You don't have to worship a God, but to take that out of their platform
Rocky
is
and
unbelievable.
Professor Guzman, don't you think if the Republican Party were united by Donald Trump, he would be ahead in the polls?
No, not Professor Guzman brings up the very valid point that there is an establishment wing of both the Republican and Democratic Party
Right.
that Donald Trump is the change agent against. And I'm not here to
So
apologize
then
for
how
Donald
can
Trump.
you say all these wonderful things about a party that doesn't support?
Because the
its own
party-
agenda?
platform.
We've got the candidates of the parties and those candidates and the positions they represent. I mean,
It's the
Let
party
me
platform.
Parsing
turn to
something
the
that doesn't need to
Democrats
be
for a
parsed.
moment. We don't have a lot of time left, but aren't the Democrats holding together for this election? But what's going to happen on November 9th?
Well, first of all, we'll see what
Assuming
happens with the
she's
Senate
elected.
and what happens with the House. But I think Democrats actually are more united than they've ever been. Our platform is actually one that was written for the 21st century. The Republican platform looks like it was chiseled into some sort of stone written for the Stone Age. They've gone backwards on all their policies. Democrats actually have the most
good one.
progressive platform. I'll let you finish in
I
just a
didn't say
second.
anything.
Have the most progressive platform
Interrupt you again.
at the national level because two candidates that fought hard in the primary came together to shape that, as opposed to the Republican primary where you have at least 4 of the people who were challenging Donald Trump have refused to endorse him. So it is the Republican Party is certainly in disarray, and we'll see what happens after the election.
One of the challenges to the Democratic Party, Jim Webb, has endorsed Donald Trump. So you can if you
Yeah,
look
I
at
think
the
we're
percentage,
we're
there's
gonna-
more Democrats that are endorsing Donald Trump.
We're
than
gonna
Republicans.
crumble with the Jim
We're,
Webb
we're talking
administration.
about
Not
we're
sure
talking
many
about
people know who Jim
progressive
Webb is,
agenda,
to
and
tell
that
you the truth,
includes
so that doesn't sway
Podesta's
your
efforts
terribly
to infiltrate the Catholic Church and change the doctrine of the Catholic Church to things that agree with the progressive agenda. Nothing could be more wrong.
So what does he
than
do?
for-
He's lurking around the Vatican trying to do that. I mean, what do you? The things you
if
say
you-
are nonsensical.
That's,
No,
that's
they're
not
nonsensical.
true at all. That's not true at all.
at the reason-
So in the
It's well
Democratic
established-
platform, there's something
it's-
in there to try to subvert the will of the Catholic Church.
It's well established that their desire is to go against basic tenets of the Catholic Church, and one of those includes abortion.
like marriage
like
equality
helping
and being
lower
and being
income
and
and
giving women the
abortion,
right to
vivisection of
outreach.
babies, vivisection of babies until the point of birth, which is what Hillary Clinton supports,
It's
Well,
been-
and
the-
Donald Trump
the,
does not.
The
Isn't
Democratic
the Pope
platform for many.
sabotaging the Catholic
The
religion?
Democratic let's be clear for viewers. The Democratic platform, as opposed to the Republican platform, for years has supported Roe v. Wade. The Republican platform does not. I will take that case any day to voters
It's
in the state of
beyond Roe v.
Michigan, and the country to see who they agree with.
It's partial. Your support of partial birth abortion. Say that you support partial birth abortion. Say it.
Andy.
Say it. Say it. Say it on the cameras. The Democratic Party does.
All right.
Andy, this is
the
like
Democratic
bizarre
Party does.
the way you
Rocky.
are.
Rocky.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
Andy.
Okay. I am confused by who's who here, but but I think we have seen why this has been such an interesting, for some people, appalling election year. But we got, if you haven't voted yet, you still have an opportunity to do so. Contact Chris Swope's office. Thank you all for being here. I'm Burl Schwartz.